Evening, this is Chat UTD. I'm going to look back at the Rangers game, look ahead to the Fulham game, and also give my opinion on things in general at the club. As always, it's a good day to do a bit of a roundup at this time of the week. And we do have a game to look back on and to look forward to. So we'll start with the Rangers game, a really important win which puts us into the top 8 of the Europa League mishmash of a table, which means as it stands, and if we get a decent result in the next game, we will go through automatically to the knockout stage. We won't need a playoff, and I think that's really important because we don't want an extra couple of games, and we don't want the drama that could come with that. United can drop a 2 out of 10 at any point. We don't want some drama and end up going out of the tournament. It's an important tournament for us moving forward this season. So that was a big win, a significant win. I don't think it'll particularly give the team an awful lot of confidence. We've beaten a depleted Rangers team who are a distant second in one of the worst leagues in Europe with a last gasp goal. So it doesn't stir confidence in me, certainly not. I think it was an improved performance. It couldn't have got much worse than the second half against Brighton. But looking at the difference between the English League and the Scottish League, I don't take an awful lot from the Rangers game. But an important win nonetheless. Let's look ahead to Sunday. In preparation for this, I find myself caught between two mindsets. I'm not remotely apathetic towards United's situation. I think it's a disgrace where we are. And that part of me rages to the surface whenever I'm thinking about a game like Fulham or Brighton or Bournemouth. However, I'm also not blind to the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is we're a mid-table team, and we've been a mid-table team for 2 seasons. We're a mid-table team because we operate like a mid-table club. The tricky part is we have a stellar history. And for someone who's seen a bit of that stellar history and heard a lot about the rest of that stellar history that I wasn't around for, I find it very difficult to just go, yeah, well, we're underdogs against Fulham. But the reality is we are underdogs against Fulham. The standards have eroded at United so much that I never want it to just be accepted that that's the case, that we're underdogs against a team like Fulham. But preparing a video like this and looking ahead to a game on Sunday, I'd be foolish to say we're favourites because we're not. I just don't like the fact we're not. So I'm torn. I think if you look at the reasons Fulham are favourites, they will, I don't know a lot about them, but they will be, I can guarantee, a very well-drilled team with cohesion, fluidity, understanding, a flow to their play. They've got a manager that, by Premier League standards, has been there for quite some time, or certainly long enough to build up an understanding. All your basic fundamentals, really, that we don't really have, they've got. And far from them being in any fear of United coming or worrying about United coming tomorrow night, I think they'll really be relishing it. I think they'll be rubbing their hands together. A night under the floodlights against Man United, who really, at present, could be seen as sitting ducks. Now, I'm not saying we can't get a result, because we can. We could go down there and we could win. We could go down there and nick it. We could play really well. But I think we go into it as underdogs. And then I come back to that point I'm making about being, I'm not apathetic towards that. I think it's disgraceful that we go into a game like this as underdogs. You know what? I look back to seasons like the David Moyes season as an example. We finished 7th, I think, that season. At that point, naively, I thought this is as bad as it's going to get. We finished, let's think of our other worst finishes. We finished 6th under Mourinho in his first season, but we won the Europa League and the League Cup that season. I think we finished 6th under Ollie in his first season, well, his half season that he had when he picked up from Mourinho. We finished 6th, or did we finish as high as 6th in the Ranić Solskjaer season? I think we did, but we were awful. And obviously we finished 8th last season. So I've sort of thought, I look back at those seasons and think that was dreadful. Like, it can't get any worse than that. We're 13th and we're showing no signs of improving from that. This doesn't look like a team that's going to finish any higher than where we are. 13th in the Premier League. And like I said, I thought those seasons were awful seasons. I'm going to say this, and I don't care what it sounds like, because I'm just being true to my opinion. The Mourinho season, when we finished second, we got 81 points, was turgid. It was one of the least enjoyable seasons I've had as a United fan. The football was absolutely awful. It was the antithesis of everything Manchester United should be. It was soulless, it was lifeless, it was joyless. And we finished second and got 81 points. And here we are, 13th. And I'm not sure how many points we're going to get at the end of this season. We might get half that. Jesus. But this is what you get when slowly but surely the standards and the expectations drop. And then when they settle, there's an acceptance of that dropping of standards, especially amongst United fans. Then that becomes the norm. Let's say 6th, 5th, something like that. That's just normal now. Then it gets a little bit lower. And again, at first there's a bit of outrage. Then it just settles. Then it's just the norm. My concern is there isn't any outrage towards being 13th around the club at all. And there's nobody coming in and saying, we're going to fix this. Because slowly but surely, bit by bit, the standards have been eroded, so have the expectations. And now we go, this is where we are. Well, I'm not going to be one of those people that just goes, this is where we are. If I'm going to use a comparison, because this is all relative. So let's think. If Sunderland were in, let's say if Sunderland were mid-table in League One. So Sunderland have got, you look at their fan base, you look at their stadium, you look at, bits and pieces of their history. If they were mid-table in League One, or even bottom part of the Championship, but particularly if they were mid-table League One, their fans would be booing the team off the pitch every week. They'd be calling for the manager's head. They'd be calling for the owner's head. There'd be absolute uproar and anarchy. Because, that their standards should be higher than that. Well, I honestly believe, with no disrespect to Sunderland, Manchester United, who've won the Premier League / First Division as it was, 20 times in their history, still just about the most successful team in English football history in the league, that for 20 years under Ferguson, never finished out from the Premier League start until 2013, never finished outside the top 3. Okay, probably didn't leave us in a great state when he left, and that was a massive loss. With a huge fan base, massive stadium, the history, the heritage we've got, Man United being 13th, this Man United being 13th in the Premier League, is the equivalent of Sunderland being mid-table in League One. And nobody's booing, really. Nobody's calling. I don't want anyone calling for the manager's head because he's just arrived, but no one's calling for the board's head. No one's protesting. No one's doing anything. Most weeks, the team get clapped off the pitch, with the odd exception when maybe the team's really putting an absolute stinker, and then the next week there's a little placard saying, play like you mean it. That's it. So the fans' loyalty, United's fans' loyalty and patience, I think actually counts against us in trying to move forward as a team and as a club. This all relates back to why Fulham are favourites at the weekend and why I find that a little bit difficult to swallow, but they are. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. Just bear with me a second. I'm going to come back to what I said a moment ago about no one's going to come and save the club. No one's going to come and rescue us. Sorry. I'm going to look at that letter that the club has sent to the 1958 in response to the 1958 kind of calling the club out, really, in terms of decisions they've been making, the cost cutting, the cutting charitable donations, the putting the ticket prices up, etc. One of the lines in the letter that came back was that they've had to put the ticket prices up because we're in serious danger of breaching PSR and FFP, and that would be, this is a quote, this is what I was looking for, sorry, so excuse my pause earlier on, quote, significantly impact our ability to compete on the pitch. Okay. So tell me then, why are we in a situation where we're close to a breach of PSR and FFP? What's that got to do with the fans? We have the third best revenue in the world, and much of that is created, of course, by fans. So, we're making interest payments against debt every year because of who owns us, which counts significantly against your PSR rating. So, we're in danger of breaches of FFP and PSR because of the way the club's been run. We're in danger of breaching PSR and FFP because, Ineos, you decided to make a deal with the Glazers to keep them as the majority owners of the football club. We wouldn't have these problems if they weren't there. Or we'd certainly be circumnavigating them in a much more creative and proactive way than you are. So why should the fans pick up the cost of 11 years of the Glazers killing our football club? 21 years actually, but 20 years. But let's say 11 years because Ferguson was the sticking plaster. Why should the fans pick up the cost for that? Do they think United fans are completely bereft of any intelligence? The reason we're in this position is because of the Glazers. Oh, all right then. If it's because we're going to breach PSR, yeah, actually we'll put the ticket prices up to 85 quid. It's fine. So you put the ticket prices up because of mistakes that have been made by the owners that you've got into bed with, so we can watch turgid football, which is absolute shite. Because you haven't got the money or the creativity to work around the regulations that are there. Pull the other one. And I tell you what as well, if that's the case, then why don't you make decisions like sell Marcus Rashford? I hear about this proper structure, as I mentioned the other day. Proper structure. Well, a proper structure finds a way of getting rid of these players, but you can't because of the Glazers. Again, it comes back to them, who you decided to get in bed with. Get rid of Casemiro. You can't. Why? Because of the Glazers, who you decided to get in bed with. It's just so infuriating. So I'll tell you what the answer was. If you can't solve these problems, don't get involved. Don't buy a stake in the club. You knew what you were getting into. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's supposed to be a United fan. And all the way along with the takeover saga, as it became, as everything does with the Glazers, scumbags, we kept being fed this line. We're going to make a decision that's best for Manchester United. This is best for Manchester United. 13th in the Premier League. Can't get rid of players because they're on contracts that have been given to them by idiots. The debt remains. The interest payments on the debt is phenomenal and causes a massive issue every year. The PSR and FFP problems continue. You cut charitable donations, you cut jobs of normal people, you put ticket prices up. So all this is the best for Man United, is it? I repeat, pull the other one. The warning signs were there last year when the deal was being made. If something smells funny, don't eat it. This smelt funny from minute one. Just like in 2005, everyone warned against the Glazers and what damage they would do. And there was some protest, and there was some pretty hefty protests, and there was some again in 2009, 2010. But as fans, we went, sure, what can we do? In the majority, we went, what can we do? There was a chance of a full takeover. Again, no one. We had our foot on their neck, and no one pushed it down. No one was prepared to take that next step in terms of the fans, seeing this through, getting it over the line. Because I tell you what happened, the club let the fans think that Qatar was going to buy the club. What's the point in protesting? We're going to get what we want. And the fans fell for it. The fans didn't keep it going. The fans didn't protest militantly enough, if that's even a word. On to more immediate things that maybe, I suppose, are more relevant because the club is where it is. We have the owners we have the ownership model we have. The damage continues to be done and will continue to be done. And I don't want to get into another rant, although maybe it's too late for that. I want to talk about Amrin. I'm a touch concerned about Amrin in that he's been in the job for 2 months and I can already see signs that this is really taking his toll on him. And I'm basing that on, I suppose, his appearance, his body language, the things he's saying, but particularly the pre-match press conference before the Rangers game. He seemed a very agitated character. He looked a bit withdrawn, he looked a bit run down. All the things you see with managers. You see, David Moyes aged in 10 months by about 5 years. And in Amorim, I can see it after 2 months. Now, he's probably every day uncovering things that he's thinking, this is going to be really difficult to solve. And this is a really, really tough start for him at Man United. But he has to have a thick enough skin to deal with it. He's done so much, I think, good stuff. I think he's been brave. He's had conviction to keep playing his system. He's ousted the likes of Rashford, the only one with a bottle to do it, of all the managers we've had in recent years. Casemiro doesn't play. He says all the right things. He's brutally honest. He assesses himself. He takes responsibility for himself. He doesn't make excuses. He's one of the brightest young managers in Europe. You're not linked to replace Pep Guardiola, and heavily linked, by the way, because you're not a good manager. He's a really bright young man. Love his psychology, love the way he communicates, love the way he frames things. But he's already appearing to be quite broken. And the fans have got his back. Let's be honest, the fans would have Graham Potter's back. The fans would say they wouldn't, but they'd have Gareth Southgate's back because the fans won't say boo to a goose about anything at United. But the fans do have his back. He's very well liked by the majority of match-going Man United fans and others. The vast majority of the United fan base. not only likes him because it's very early days and we've not really had too much to base our opinion on yet, and we want to give him a chance, but just because I think he's made some really good impressions by the more his housekeeping and the things that he's done rather than what we've seen on the pitch. Fair enough, but I think there's mitigation as to why we've not seen more on the pitch, as there is with a lot of previous Man United managers. But I go back to Ferguson, and maybe I shouldn't, but Ferguson joined United in November 1986, so the same time of year that Amorim joined. We lost against Oxford United in the first game. We didn't pull up any trees in the first few months of Ferguson's tenure at United. I think just after Atkinson was sacked, Atkinson was a really popular manager amongst the players. And I believe I've read a story anyway that in the first week that Ferguson was there, the players went and had a farewell party with Ron Atkinson on the piss, which ironically was one of the things that Ferguson was trying to change, that culture, that drinking culture. Another issue he had was 3 of the big hitters in the drinking culture were cult heroes with the fans: Norman Whiteside, Paul McGrath, and the captain, Brian Robson. Now, the difference with Robson was he was so good at what he did, and he was still there at training every day at the front of the line, leading the running and stuff like that, and so good on match days that Ferguson, needed to keep him in the fold. But McGrath and Whiteside were hugely popular characters at United, probably within the dressing room, but certainly amongst the fan base, and they were 2 of the biggest culprits in terms of drinking. So we had all these little subcultures that he had to try and deal with, and try and probably going against the fans a little bit in getting rid of people like Whiteside and McGrath. He didn't have a ton of money. Martin Edwards was not a popular chairman. His first 3 signings, if I'm right, were Viv Anderson, Brian McClare, and then a little bit later Steve Bruce. Solid. Bruce and McClare obviously went on to be cornerstones of very good teams for United. Viv Anderson not so much, but good signings, but not transformative signings when you look at where we were. The point I'm coming to here is that Ferguson just had an absolute stubborn, bloody mindedness about him. Now, I've not seen press conferences of Ferguson in the first few months. Maybe he looked run down and broken, maybe he did. But Ferguson was 7 years older than Amorim when he came to United. He'd had more experience, and I think he had a great deal of confidence, even arrogance. And his stubbornness was probably one of his biggest strengths, but also, could you call it a weakness when you've won 13 Premier League titles and never finished outside the top 3 in 20 years? I don't know, but certainly I think players would say perhaps it was a weakness. And that's what you need, that thick skin, that absolute non-negotiable conviction in yourself. And I'm hearing Amorim still say, we're going to do it my way, it will come good. I'm not seeing in his body language that same level of conviction, and I'm seeing an agitation there. But you know what? It must be bloody frustrating to go into press conferences, having to answer the same questions every time. They're always trying to catch you out, the English media. And he's an intelligent guy, he'll know that. And he's probably also thinking, I keep talking a good game, but we're not getting very good results. He said himself, before the Rangers game, he said, I've won 2 out of 10 games. So that must be frustrating, and I understand. And I just hope for him that even if we blag it and don't even play that well, we just start to put something of a run together so that he can take a breath, because he's got something, I believe anyway. I think he's the right man at the right club with the wrong owners. Just going to form and thinking about, he said about 2 wins in 10, obviously it's 3 wins in 11 now. If we look at our last 8 games, it's not pretty. We lost to Bournemouth. We lost away at Wolves. I thought we were a bit unfortunate at Wolves, but anyway, we lost. Newcastle at home was horrific, a humiliating night. Liverpool away, I know it was a good result, but we drew. Arsenal away, again, fantastic effort, but we drew and won on penalties, so we've not really won that game as such. There's 5 games. Southampton, we scraped through, won 3-1. Brighton, we lost. And Rangers, we won in the last minute. So we've won 2 games in 8. And those games were Southampton, who are going to get relegated with probably one of the worst points records in Premier League history, and it required a late comeback. And Rangers, who I said before were depleted and are a distant second in a pub league in Scotland. So that form is really concerning. Where are we going to suddenly start to find consistency from? Because even in our best moments in the last few weeks, we still haven't won games. And just to round off, I was thinking this before. To be a kid again when I was a youngster watching United in the late 80s, when we were at times 13th, when we were abject and the fans were all kicking off and whatever, and Terrar Fergie banners were being unfurled and stuff like that. As a kid, for me, and I touched on this, I think in one of my videos recently, I was just absolutely in love with them. I didn't care. I didn't care that when we scored, I just used to go absolutely batshit crazy. Because you've got that childlike innocence where your team scored a goal and the feeling that you get from it. And it's why, if you're going to like football, that's the way it feels when you're a youngster. And as an adult, I look at it and go, like, obviously I look, but certain goals in particular are very big goals and you celebrate them and stuff. But you score a goal like last minute winner against Rangers and you're just like, it's great, but you know this isn't really leading anywhere. So, to be a kid again. But hopefully that sums up what's going on at the club. Not going to get into the Garnacho stuff. There's no point. It's speculative at the moment, so we'll have to see what happens with that. I've already given my opinion on that. I'm just going to end on this. We've been linked with Nkunku, I think he's called, from Chelsea. I said before about standards dropping and about being real, but not falling into the category of being apathetic. Your standards have really dropped if you sign a player in Nkunku, who is 27 years old, has a horrible injury record, and in 18 games this season has 2 goals and 1 assist as an attacking player. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Glazers out.